Hi, it's Daniel Wyatt from Mixmaster Wyatt Academy with What's New. And what's new is new from Slate. We now have the virtual tube collection for the virtual mix rack. And anyone who knows our school knows that we love our saturation. We take it very, very seriously. And when a new saturator comes to the market, of course we have to test drive it. And I can say, I'll take the suspense out of this video. I love these new tubes, and they are part of our system for sure. Tubes are interesting. They are similar to tape in the sense that they can be run either clean or you can push them. And if you don't push them, you get a very clean hi-fi sort of response. That's why audiophiles love them. If you push them, you get all kinds of harmonics. So whenever I get a new saturator at the school, I always like to just look at it visually without even listening to it first, because I'm always curious what the saturation footprint looks like. So the way I do that is I take any oscillator, I'm in Logic today, take any oscillator and I put the frequency to 100 just because it's easy math. Now, one thing to note about almost all of the Slate collection is it's calibrated to -18, so it's a little bit more sensitive. Also true for the virtual bus compressor collection. You can't go into these too loud. And it's actually, if you do, what happens is if you enter any of these Slate plugins too loud, with too much level, you can't get the sweet spots that were intended by the designers. So make sure when you're going into the virtual mix rack or virtual tape collection, virtual tube collection, that you start with a low enough level, lower than perhaps you're used to with other plugins, but it's worth it. And you can always make up the gain elsewhere if you need to. Okay, so now we see here that we have a sine wave at 100 hertz, and it shows up here on our beautiful FabFilter Pro Q2, which is nice just for this kind of metering. And we can see that it is centered at 100. It's not exactly symmetrical, but it's centered at 100. So there is our sine wave. If we turn on the Hollywood tube, all of a sudden we see these beautiful harmonics, and they're hovering. So if we go to the octave, which is 200, the fundamental being 100, we see that there's a big bump at 200. There's also a bump at 300, and these bumps are almost quantized, right? Which is interesting. That's the way analog saturation works. When you overdrive the input, the signal splinters off into harmonics and adds richness and density to the signal. So this is the saturated signal with all the little mountains there. Here's the unsaturated signal. And here's the thick, rich, dense, saturated signal. So that's what saturation looks like. So I'm always curious. Is it odd-ordered harmonics? Is it even-ordered harmonics? Is it both? And all of these tubes have sort of different distributions of even and odd-ordered harmonics. Even-ordered harmonics tend to be smooth. Odd-ordered harmonics tend to have a little bit of an edge. And the combination makes for this beautiful texture that is tube saturation. So here the Hollywood looks like this, and you can see that it's a very nonlinear musical shape. The London tube looks like this. Again, this is not pure linear digital. This is quirky analog love. But we can see, again, here's the even-ordered harmonic. The first harmonic is not too strong, but the first odd-ordered harmonic is quite strong. So this has a different sound and some peaks and dips along the way. And then finally, we have here the New York flavor, tube flavor, and it has a different profile. So all having even and odd-ordered harmonics, different energy distributions amongst the harmonics, but that is the look of saturation. So I always have to do that whenever I get a saturator. First thing I want to do is just take a look at how it looks on the map. What they've done with Slate is they've given us 3 different flavors: Hollywood, London, and New York, inspired by classic vintage topologies and designs, and they all sound a little bit different. They're very easy to use. If we go here and we go to Hollywood first, there's two different modelings. One is the preamp, and that's a little more flavorful. You can actually get a more zesty sound out of that. Console is a little more conservative, but they both give it a very nice tube color. If you're looking for more, you're going to be in the preamp mode. And if you're looking for more, there's normal and push. Well, you guessed it, push gives you more. So more harmonic density and nonlinear response. And the other thing about tubes, which is true for other saturators like decapitator, which gets its name from chopping something's head off, right? Which is soft clipping. And soft clipping takes some of those spiky, pesky peaks that don't really contribute to the power of anything, but they get in the way and they cause distortion and clipping, and it trims them off. So we get two things out of our wonderful tube saturators. We get a little bit of soft clipping, and we get some wonderful saturation as well, and a nonlinear response. So we have the push and the normal here. The saturation drive is here, just again, very similar to Soundtoys Decapitator, which has a T and P setting, which also is tube saturation. So the more saturation we want, we drive the saturation here. Here's a high pass filter or a rumble cut, but it's more of a tone knob because rumble cuts don't usually go all the way up to 250. I thought at first when I was first playing with it that this was before the saturation, a low cut before the saturation. I think it's after. It doesn't really say in the manual. I think it's after. But this allows you to take out the rumble, to trim off low frequencies, tighten up the sound, and it goes up pretty high, so you can do some cool sound design things with that. Here is your output, and we don't have that inverse relationship where the drive turns the output down, which we've seen in other Slate plugins. I don't know why they didn't do it. Maybe they will. Maybe there's a reason. I don't know. And here for parallel processing or just making things more subtle is a wet-dry mix. So the setup is the same for all three. The response and the flavors are different. Again, at Mixmaster Wyatt Academy, in our world-famous Mixing Foundations class, where we teach saturation for an entire week, I've put these into the curriculum because I love them so much, and they filled a gap in the sort of tube saturation single band category. So with all that being said, let's give them a listen. I have here a very simple Apple loop, and I like to use drums when I test drive saturators because they have all kinds of frequencies and transients going on, and it's a nice way to do it. So let's give it a listen. One thing I would note about this collection and many of the Slate plugins is that they don't like to take a lot of level coming in. A lot of them are calibrated to, I think, -18, which is different than other plugins. So if you have a super loud sample pack kick and you start to run it through and you're like, I can't get a sweet spot here, you want to turn down your pre-fader, pre-insert gain. On Logic, it hides over here. And I've turned down this Apple loop to -20, which sounds crazy, but it actually allows us to get the good resolution on the plugin, and which is the way the designers designed it. Okay, so don't go in too loud. Sample packs, normalize things. It's not going to work. You have to turn them down at the clip level or the pre-fader gain level, pre-gain level, pre-insert gain, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so here we go. First, we'll bypass. And I always like to overdrive saturators right away to see and hear what too much is. So you'll see constantly in our engineering approach at the school too, the first thing we'll do is just overdo something right away to hear and see what too much is. And you'll see when you overdrive this, it has a different response than overdriving tape, but you can get that kind of funky distortion. So first going for a distorted sound, And let's actually look through some of the different modes here and see how they sound. And for all the YouTube haters, I will try to do my very unscientific A-B unity gain comparison thing, which I don't particularly care all that much about, but I will try. You'll notice right away that it has a tight sound. Tubes can sound very tight depending on how you drive them. It has a rich sound and it has a warm sound. And that is the Hollywood sound. And they all have, I think they all share that richness, the warmth, and the tightness of tubes. Tubes being very different than tape, right? A different kind of saturator. So let's look also through some of the other modes as well here. So the first interesting thing I think we see is that the saturation modeling from the console and the preamp settings is quite different. And it's different with the way it deals with gain. And the console setting is, I guess, supposed to be a tube summing algorithm which can handle much more input. So it doesn't show its flavor as quickly. It still has the same essence, but if you're going for more, as I said earlier, more happens with preamp, pickup, more happens with preamp, and then more happens with push. So let's take a look at push, and we'll dial this back for a second. So that's a demonstration of push for you. And finally, we'll take a look at the high pass filter or the low cut. And we'll see that you can use it to clean things up, but you can also use it for reductive EQ and for sound design. Pickup. Okay, so it's a very simple layout, very, very easy to use, very flexible, very intelligent design, user-friendly. Okay, now let's jump between the three different flavors, like a transatlantic jet going from Hollywood to London to New York. Here we go. So they all have very different sort of tonal characteristics. The Hollywood has the big low end, and the London has the sort of bigger mid-range, but a sort of a soft high end. And the New York's the brightest. They're going to respond differently depending on what your source material is. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this What's New. Please check out mixmasterwyatt.com. We have all kinds of mixing and mastering classes for every level and every schedule and lifestyle. We have live trainings where you can come and have teacher and classmates. We have video courses that you can binge watch and then show up for live question and answer once a week. So we have all kinds of things for you. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I love these tubes. They will go first in our channel stripping chain, and they're a wonderful addition to the family. Okay, everyone, happy mixing. See you online. Thanks again. mixmasterwyatt.com.